Laura Carno is with us. She is the executive director of Faster Colorado, a training program to provide world-class training to school staff who are authorized to carry concealed weapons on campus. And she is the author of Government Ruins Nearly Everything. Laura, thank you for coming on. It's good to see you.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
I'd have taken out the nearly, but I'm sure you had good reason for saying that. Let's start with this. You talk about mother may I culture. What is mother may I culture?
Yeah, when we're kids, it's completely appropriate for our parents to tell us what to do. And some people, when they grow up, think that it's completely appropriate to ask the government for permission. But for goodness sakes, we are grown-ups, we're adults. We actually know better how to run our lives than politicians or bureaucrats thousands of miles away. So why is it that there are so many things that the government, regardless of at what level, tells us what we should do? I'm trying to break that mother may I culture. You often hear people say there ought to be a law. And no, there ought not to be a law.
Well, why do they do that? Do you think it is psychological? You think it is they put the government in the place of their parents and they can't break free? Why do they do that?
Yeah, I refer to it in the book as parenthood by proxy. There are people who think that there are folks smarter than us, that if not for them telling us how to live our lives, we might not know. And I think there's also another category of people who say, I actually know how to live my life okay, but it's those people over there who are making bad decisions, and somebody ought to tell them how to make decisions. And I refer to it as the betters versus the bumpkins. If not for those smart people with masters and PhDs and whatever telling us that we should ride bikes instead of cars or eat this instead of that, gosh, what would happen to us? Well, probably nothing. We would be just fine making decisions on our own.
So you've got people who think that they need the government to be parents, and people who think that they are smarter than the normal people. What goes wrong? I mean, first of all, what does the government ruin? When you say the government ruins nearly everything, let's get specific. What kinds of things does government ruin?
I mean, all of it. But in the book,
Yeah.
in the book, we take on I call them the fireworks issues: abortion, marriage, schools, guns. And it's sort of two topics on each side of the aisle, where that side of the aisle says government should control these two things, but we should have choice on these other two things. Flip the issues, flip the side of the aisle. And so I ask the question, are we smart enough to make our own choices? And if we're concerned about those issues, if we want fewer abortions, better marriages, schools that work, and less gun violence, why in God's name would we turn them over to the government to fix? It breaks things. And I have a chapter called "It's a Matter of Incentives." And so when we've all seen these stories play out time and time again, the government identifies a problem and it says, oh, we must throw bazillions of dollars at this problem. The problem never gets better. Never gets better. It always gets worse. You can look at just about anything. And so the answer then, when the government says, oh my goodness, it didn't get better, what's the answer? More money and more control over people. So and at the end of the book, the beginning of the book, I say, here's why it's not working. An early reader described it as, if your neighbor is ticked off at the government and doesn't know why, read this book. That's the first part of the book. The second part of the book is those four issues, and they're very contentious, of course. But I look at, I offer, I hope, a hopeful message for folks. If these are the issues waking you up every day, saying, gosh, I have to do something about this, and we know that the government isn't the place to fix it, here's some hopeful stories of people who are today outside of government doing good work that's actually making a difference in these areas.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. If you say government ruins marriage, for instance, I mean, most of my life, the government has said something to say about marriage. Should the government have nothing to say about marriage?
Yeah, I mean, the purely libertarian way to look at it is, this is a contract between two people, and it's not really anybody else's business. We currently have marriage laws, but you look at the marriage penalty in Obamacare. You look at all of these kinds of things that government puts out there and says, okay, if you are a mom who is getting public assistance, is there an incentive or a disincentive for her to marry the father of her kids? It's a disincentive.
Right.
And so government's making all those sorts of value judgments over and over. And I think all of us, if you ask somebody, can government make marriage better? It's almost laughable when I say this, when I speak in audiences. I wait 2 seconds and everybody starts getting it. I mean, they chuckle. No, government's not interested. In fact, it places disincentives to marriage.
So what about something like education? I mean, this is the one that people are always saying, well, the government has to give us, we need people to be educated, more education should be free. And yet it does seem here in California, where we pour money basically into the maw of the teachers union, we have terrible, terrible schools rated, I think it's number like 48th in the country. I may not have that exactly right, but it's very low. Why can't the government get that right? I mean, all we need is education. What are they doing wrong?
They're controlling education from Washington, D.C. So anybody who has more than one child knows that you can't raise two of the exact same child given the same genetics and the same upbringing. So why would we think that government thousands of miles away is going to create a curriculum that works for everybody, much less, my two grandbabies, who are completely different children. So, and I look to the school choice movement that really has become very, very nonpartisan, as all moms and dads want their kids to do good. It used to be more of a conservative as opposed to liberal, but gosh, look at Waiting for Superman, and it breaks your heart that these children, they have a great chance at life if they have a great education. And here in Colorado, where I live, we have great charter school laws here, meaning you can get together. You've got to meet some pretty stringent guidelines. But if you want a school dedicated to art, if you want a school that's really good for kids on the spectrum, there are all kinds of communities coming together and saying we can do a better job. And in Colorado, when you look at the top 10 schools from SAT scores, college entrance, that sort of thing, 8 of the 10 are charter schools here.
Wow.
And they're doing it on less money because the part of our charter school laws here that isn't great is there is unequal funding. So when you talk about in California, the billions poured into schools that do the things the teachers unions want done, we're doing it with less money here, and it's serving children and parents in those communities.
So you're not a thoroughgoing libertarian. You believe that the government can set standards, for instance, and make sure, especially local governments, which are always better than the federal government. But people, liberals especially, look at gun violence and they say, oh my gosh, we have all these guns, we have more mass shootings than other countries. Does the government not have to do something, or does the government make that worse too?
Yeah, the government makes it worse. So where government butts in, I know it's like a spoiler alert, right? Where the government butts in, and just think about Washington, D.C., Chicago, Detroit, where the government butts in and says, we are going to clamp down. It never gets better. Where government says, we're going to loosen that up, it acknowledges that gun laws in specific aren't followed by criminals. Criminals, by definition, break laws. So you look at, let's just say the Aurora Theater killing that we had here a few years ago in Colorado. Awful, awful situation. Does anybody out there think that one more law would have stopped that guy? He broke, 30. Yeah. Nothing else would have stopped him. But what happens is people like us, law-abiding gun owners, are going to say, gosh, I'm law-abiding. It's right in the title I just gave myself. I don't want to risk my freedom and liberty and be put in jail for something. I'm going to follow the law. So all it does is makes it harder on people like us to defend ourselves from criminals who aren't following the law. So over and over, we see tighter gun control laws, more gun crime, looser laws, less gun crime.
So if you're an activist, if you're worried about something, what do you think is the right way to go in terms of dealing with problems that, all societies have problems? Should you not go to the government? How do you start?
I think you almost should start with the government and say, what is the government doing that's causing this problem?
So first, stop the government. Yeah. Okay.
Sure. I mean, you look at anything from, Social Security has been around a really long time, and there's lots of people who just don't remember a time where we didn't have Social Security. So let's say you wake up and say, gosh, my grandma is retired. She's living just on her Social Security check. It's not enough. How can we make Social Security give her more? I would challenge folks to say, what if instead of being forced at some point in the past to give her money to Social Security, and the government invests it, I'm putting air quotes around invests it and delivers unto her $600 a month or whatever it turns out to be. What if kids today had an option? You can go into the Social Security system, or not saying that I want the government to control anymore, but what if there were choices? So I would just ask that question: if to save the grandma of the future from being in that situation, shouldn't we give the kids today a choice not to have to be in those situations? Yeah,
that's good thinking. Laura Carno, very, very interesting. Author of Government Ruins Nearly Everything. Again, I praise your charitable nearly in there, but I'm not sure I agree. Thank you very much for coming on, Laura. It's good talking to you.
Thanks so much, Andrew.